The dishwasher had just beeped. Steam still hung in the air like a ghost when she turned to me and said it, with her back against the sink, arms crossed, towel hanging from one finger like she couldn't be bothered. I'm going out. Don't wait up. No explanación. No love you. Just that. Like we were roommates. Strangers. Less than that. And I didn't ask where. I didn't even lift my head from the counter. My fingers were damp from putting away plates. My heart was heavier than the cast iron pan still sitting on the stove. Because I knew. Somewhere in my gut, I already knew. Not just about the man. I didn't even have a name yet. But I knew I'd lost her. Not last week. Not last month. Way before. I just refused to admit it. She was already at the door when I said, almost too quietly, "Cassidy, please don't do this." She stopped, half-turned, tilted her head like she was hearing thunder in the distance. Do what? Her voice was laced with that sugary poison, the kind you use on people you pity. You know what? That was it. That's all I had left in me. Her eyes narrowed just a hair, the way they always did when she was calculating if I was worth the truth. Then came the smirk. "You always assume the worst," she said. "You should try therapy." Seriously. She left before I could reply. The sound of the door clicking shut felt surgical, like something inside me had just been removed without anesthetic. I stood in that kitchen for a full hour. The lights were still on. My phone buzzed once, a reminder to water the plants. I didn't move. I kept replaying her tone, that deliberate calm, that practiced indifference. And that was the moment I knew something irreversible had happened. So I started watching, tracking, not to catch her, but because I needed to understand what I'd become. I started recording times, saving receipts she left behind, checking mileage on her car when she forgot to reset it. A spreadsheet of suspicion. And just when I thought I was imagining it all, when I almost convinced myself I was the one unraveling, something happened that confirmed everything. It wasn't a message, or a photo, or some dramatic confrontation. It was a stranger who rang my doorbell at 2:12 a.m. on a Thursday. And what he told me changed the story completely. Not just about her betrayal, but about who she really was, and what she was planning next. He didn't knock twice. Just once, firm and slow. The kind of knock that makes your blood run cold before you even reach the hallway. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was just past 2 in the morning. Cassidy wasn't home. Again. And I had convinced myself she was asleep at a friend's, or crying in her car, or something less cruel than the truth. When I opened the door, I didn't say anything. I just stared at him. He looked normal. Too normal. Navy windbreaker, gray shirt underneath, late 30s maybe. Eyes like someone who'd already seen the worst and didn't flinch anymore. But what rattled me was what he held, a red silk scarf. Cassidy's. She wore it the night before. Had it tied in her hair when she left, smiling at her phone. Said she was going to book launch. She doesn't read. I knew it was a lie, but I hadn't expected this. The man didn't introduce himself. Didn't ask if I was Everett. He already knew. Instead, he held out the scarf and said, "You need to be careful. She's not who you think she is." For a moment, I thought it was a prank. Or worse, that he was someone she'd hired to mess with me. Her latest power move in the long, slow process of emotional erosion. But something about the way his hand trembled as he held out the scarf, it felt real. "Who are you?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. It sounded small, crooked, like someone trying to talk in a nightmare. He didn't answer. He just stepped back and said, "Don't let her take anything else from you." Then he turned and walked off into the dark. I didn't follow him. I should have. But my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. That night, I sat on the floor of the kitchen and just stared at that scarf. I replayed every moment from the past 6 months in my head like static on a busted radio. Her changing passwords, her quiet contempt, her sudden interest in makeup she used to mock, her text one night saying, "Don't wait up, I'm with Bree," even though Bree had moved to Oregon 6 weeks earlier. And now, a man I've never met holding part of her wardrobe like it was evidence in a crime. The next day, I called Bree. I had to know if she'd covered for Cassidy. Had to know how far this went. But the moment Bree heard my voice, her tone changed. She told me you were sick, Everett. That you were controlling. That you'd snap if you found out about Jonah. Jonah. There it was. The name I wasn't supposed to know. I asked who he was. Bree hesitated. She said he was helping her feel alive again. I don't know. I didn't want to get involved. I hung up without saying goodbye. I'd been warned. I gave Cassidy the space she asked for. I even asked her outright once, "Is there someone else?" And she stared at me like the question offended her. Like I was the one cheating on her trust, on her healing journey. But now I had a name. Jonah. I had a scarf. A stranger. And 100 things that suddenly made horrible, perfect sense. That night, Cassidy came home at 3:07 a.m. She was quiet, makeup smudged, hair down. No explanation. She slipped off her shoes, walked past me on the couch like I was a houseplant, and started up the stairs. I followed, not with rage, just resignation. I'd seen what I needed to see. When I got to the bedroom, she was already under the covers, phone screen glowing against her face. I asked calmly, "Cassidy, who's Jonah?" Her fingers froze on the screen. She didn't answer right away. She didn't have to, because the next words she said weren't denial. They were worse. Much worse. She didn't ask how I knew his name. She didn't act surprised, didn't blink, didn't even put her phone down. She just exhaled one long, controlled breath, and then said the single most terrifying sentence of my life. Well, it was supposed to stay clean. I stood in the doorway, not sure if I misheard. "What?" She looked up, finally, eyes tired but calm. "This whole thing, it wasn't supposed to get messy. You weren't supposed to find out like this." I didn't move. I didn't speak. The only thing louder than the silence was the pounding of my own heartbeat. I wasn't prepared for honesty. Not this kind. Not when it arrived late, cold, and carved up like it belonged in a legal contract. "Who is he?" I managed. She sat up, brushed her hair back, like we were having a conversation about groceries. "Jonah works in private consulting. We met at a mindfulness workshop. I wasn't looking for anything. It just happened. But we had boundaries. You were never supposed to be dragged into it." Dragged into it? I was her husband. This was our home. My name was still on the lease, the bills, the car, the damn doormat. "What do you mean boundaries?" I asked, and I hated how weak I sounded. She sighed again, deeper this time. The sigh you give someone who's too slow to keep up with the conversation. "Jonah and I had rules. No emotional crossover. No sleeping at his place 2 nights in a row. No texting while we're under the same roof. You weren't supposed to know because I was trying to protect you." I actually laughed. Not a real laugh. A nervous, cracked, almost animal noise. "You cheated on me and called it protection?" She tilted her head like a therapist trying to reframe a client's spiral. "You were spiraling long before Jonah. You stopped smiling, Everett. You stopped trying. I was surviving. I wanted to scream, but something darker stopped me." Surviving? She was thriving. Haircuts, new clothes, spontaneous trips to yoga that looked a lot like hotel stays. And now it wasn't just a one-night stand. It was a partnership. A hidden chapter of her life she curated while I washed her mugs and paid her credit card. She looked almost offended when I didn't answer. "You warned me," she said finally. "I know. I remember. But I had to make a choice, Everett. And I chose myself." I sat down on the edge of the bed, not because I forgave her, but because I physically couldn't stand anymore. Everything hurt, but not in a way painkillers could fix. This was the kind of hurt that changes the blueprint of your reality. Makes you question if your memories were real, or if they were just edited illusions stitched together by a desperate man. That's when I told her about the man at the door. I didn't name him, just said he gave me her scarf, told me she was dangerous, that she wasn't who I thought she was. I watched her face carefully, and that's when the first crack appeared. Her lip twitched, slightly, almost imperceptibly. She stood, grabbed the edge of the dresser, and said something so strange, so off script, I didn't even register it at first. "You weren't supposed to be home tonight." Silence. "Istir daher." "What?" She turned slowly. Her voice was lower now. Not angry, not panicked, focused, like she'd rehearsed this moment in her head for months. "You were supposed to be in Houston, at your sister's. You said you were going. I blinked. I canceled. You knew that." She shook her head. "I thought you left anyway." I needed that window." "Window for what?" My mouth was dry. Cassidy looked at me, and something behind her eyes shifted, like a door closing. She didn't answer. She just walked past me again, this time slower. No words. She went down the stairs barefoot, the way you do when you don't want to be heard. I stood there alone, heart racing, stomach twisting, brain racing toward a finish line I couldn't yet see. She had planned something for tonight, something that required me to be gone. And someone out there, someone who knew her better than I did, had shown up to stop her. I didn't sleep that night. Cassidy didn't come back upstairs. I heard the front door open once around 4 a.m. and then close again. I didn't check. I just lay there on our bed, my bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling and feeling like I'd wandered out of my own life and into someone else's script. She hadn't denied Jonah. She hadn't even denied planning something. She just said I wasn't supposed to be home, like I'd ruined her schedule. I couldn't let it go. I wouldn't let it go. By the time the sun came up, I had gone from numb to obsessed. I needed to know what she meant, what she was hiding, and what that stranger was trying to stop her from doing. I started with her car. While she was still asleep on the couch downstairs, or pretending to be, I went to the garage and opened her trunk. Nothing unusual. Spabake. Julgamalt. One of those decorative tote bags she used to carry at the farmer's market when we still went together. But when I opened the glove compartment, I found something strange. 2 hotel key cards. Both for the same hotel, same floor. I checked the dates on the attached notepads, and my stomach twisted. The dates lined up with the weekend. I had been out of town last month. The one where she texted me, "Miss you, babe. Hope the weather's nice." She wasn't home. She wasn't with Bree. She was renting 2 rooms. Why 2? Back inside, I went to her office. She never let me into that space anymore. She called it her sanctuary, which apparently was code for where I hide the things I don't want my husband to find. Inside the bottom drawer of her locked filing cabinet, the key taped behind a mirror because Cassidy could never resist a bad spy movie cliché, I found a manila folder. No name on it, no label, just a single sheet of paper, folded 3 times, crisp, clean, and chilling. It wasn't a letter. It was a checklist. At the top, in neat handwriting, it said, "Next phase." Underneath were 10 bullet points, each one vague but unsettling. Confirm Jonah's arrival. Move backup drive. Transfer final documents. Double-check signature access. Remove Everett's computer access. Notify L once cleared. Secure P.O. box keys. Delay Houston trip. Finalize call with Andrea. Clear Everett. Clear Everett. My name. My name. On a list like I was a variable. An obstacle. Something to clear. I sat there staring at those words, hands shaking, ears ringing. This wasn't an affair anymore. This was organized. This was layered. This was built over time. L. Was that her sister? A lawyer? And Andrea? I didn't even know an Andrea. What final documents? Why was she trying to remove me from computer access? I grabbed my laptop and opened our shared accounts, the ones we barely used. Empty. All of them. The emergency savings I had set aside 3 years ago after my layoff scare? Gone. The joint investment fund? Cleared. I opened our Google Drive next. She had editing access to some of my files for her home budget. She had removed herself from all shared folders. But I found one folder that had been deleted just hours before. Tax year statements and docs. I went digging through trash recovery. Locked. Password protected. Cassidy doesn't do our taxes. I ran down the stairs, laptop in hand, but she was already gone. No note. No call. Nothing. Just a freshly wiped kitchen counter and her favorite mug missing from the rack. By noon, I was calling our bank. By 1 p.m., I was visiting the hotel. The clerk was polite but firm. "We can't disclose any guest information, sir." I showed him one of the key cards. "This is mine. I'm trying to recover something I left in the room. Please." He checked the number. His brow furrowed. This room was flagged. It's already been turned over to security. "Sorry, I can't give you access." Flag for what? I really can't say. I left shaking. That night, I got another knock at the door. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone else. A woman. She didn't say who she was at first, only that she knew Jonah, and that I needed to sit down. Because Cassidy wasn't just cheating on me. She was using me for something I still hadn't fully uncovered, and I only had days left to stop it. The woman at my door introduced herself only after she saw I wasn't going to slam it in her face. She looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in days, but had lived through years. Mid-40s, maybe, holding a folder like it was something radioactive. Her name was Madeline. She said she'd driven over 3 hours just to speak with me, and she didn't want to do it twice. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she began. "But if you're Everett, Landon, you need to hear what I have to say. And you need to hear it now." I let her in. She didn't sit, just stood in the middle of the living room like she didn't want to feel comfortable in the same space Cassidy had lived in. And then she said something I will never forget, something that made my stomach cave in like a building hit by a wrecking ball. "You're not the first man Cassidy's done this to." At first, I thought she meant cheating. I was wrong. "She did the same thing to my brother," Madeline said, flipping open the folder and pulling out photos, documents, even a driver's license copy with Cassidy's face and a different last name. 3 years ago, different city, same strategy. She targeted him, drained his accounts, opened 2 LLCs in his name, and vanished. We didn't even know about it until a collections agency showed up and started talking about back taxes. He thought they were married. Turned out the marriage license was never filed. I took the documents from her and stared at the name on the fake company filings. Westbridge Wellness Solutions. Cassidy had talked about starting something called Westbridge last year. Said it was just a passion project. An idea for later, she told me. But she'd already created it. Without me. Without even using her real name. "I thought she loved him," Madeline said, her voice quieter now. "He was fragile. Just out of rehab. She made him feel like a man again. And then gone. Along with nearly 70 grand in access to his identity." I sat down, everything in my hands shaking. Why come to me? Because I saw her in the background of a social media post 2 weeks ago. Someone tagged her under a different name, Cassidy Layton. That was the name she used with my brother. I knew it was her the moment I saw her eyes. I told Madeline everything. About Jonah, the scarf, the list I found, the money that had vanished. She nodded the entire time, like she'd already heard the story before. Different town. Same formula. She uses men like scaffolding, she said. Builds herself higher and disappears before they realize they were holding her up. We talked for nearly 2 hours. She showed me a copy of a private investigator's report. The addresses Cassidy had used. Bank accounts she closed. A security firm report that traced a phone number used to verify a PayPal account. The same one I'd once seen flash across Cassidy's screen. Quickly swiped away. When Madeline left, I felt like someone had just opened a trapdoor into my life. Every memory was now part of a performance I hadn't auditioned for. Every kiss, every compliment, every night she told me I overthink everything. It was all scaffolding. I wasn't her partner. I was a mark. And Jonah? He wasn't just the other man. He was part of it. The next morning, I called every number I had access to. Creditors, tax offices, the bank. One of the reps told me something that made my blood go cold. "You want to call back with your attorney. The business account in your name triggered an audit last week." Business account? She'd used my identity. While I was making chili, doing the laundry, planning our anniversary trip like a fool, she had been using my name to commit fraud. And I had one last card to play. The only one she didn't know I still had. An old laptop in the attic, untouched for years. One she'd never logged into, never asked about. The one where I used to write short stories, keep copies of old tax records, and back up encrypted files before we got our new system. That night, I dug it out, booted it up. And what I found in a forgotten synced folder nearly stopped my heart. A recording of Cassidy and Jonah sitting in my kitchen, talking about what would happen if I found out too soon. The audio file was buried deep, nested inside an old sync folder I hadn't touched in years. It was labeled Kitchen Demo 3.wave, like it had something to do with that remodeling project we gave up on. The timestamp was 3 months ago, a day when Cassidy said she was at a yoga retreat, and I was out of town visiting my mother. At first, I thought it was an accident, some random sound file. But when I played it, my breath caught. It wasn't a demo. It was them, Cassidy and Jonah, in my kitchen, sitting at my table, drinking coffee from our mugs like it was their home. Her voice came first. "He won't fight it. That's the beauty of it. Everett's not the kind of man who throws punches. He throws self-doubt. Jonah laughed. A low, careful laugh. You're sure? Because once we initiate the final transfers, there's no unpulling the pin. I'm sure, she said. I've been testing his limits. He breaks inward. Every time, you just have to tilt the guilt in his direction and let him collapse under it. I paused the recording. Everything I'd ever believed about our arguments, about my reactions, about me, had just been reduced to a strategy. I wasn't even a husband in her mind. I was a chess piece, something to be maneuvered off the board. I forced myself to press play again. Jonah's voice turned more serious. And what about Madeline? You said she was sniffing around again. Cassidy replied without hesitation. She's harmless. She doesn't have proof. And even if she did, no one listens to the sister of a dead addict. Dead? I didn't know Madeline's brother had died. She hadn't mentioned it. Just said Cassidy vanished with his money. But if that was true, if Cassidy was involved with something that spiraled that far, I shut the laptop. I couldn't listen anymore. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because my thoughts had suddenly shifted from heartbreak to something else. This was premeditated. This wasn't a betrayal. It was a blueprint. They mapped me out, timed everything, manipulated every crack in my personality, my hesitation, my loyalty, my inability to push back, until I was standing in an empty kitchen wondering if I ever really existed in this marriage at all. And yet, something about the recording bugged me. Why was it saved here, on a machine I hadn't used in years? I looked at the file path again, synced via my old Dropbox, a service Cassidy didn't even know I still had access to. That meant she didn't put the file there. Someone else did. I scrolled up, checked the upload log. The IP address wasn't mine, not even close. It came from New Mexico, and it had been uploaded 12 days ago. Someone wanted me to find this. Not Cassidy, not Jonah, someone who had been watching them. I didn't sleep that night. Every knock outside, every car passing down the street, it all felt too loud, too close. I started rechecking the locks. I thought about calling the police, but I didn't even know what I'd report. My wife might be committing organized fraud. They'd ask for proof. All I had were fragments. The next day, I received an email. No subject line, no text, just a single attachment. Another audio file. But this one was different. It was Jonah, alone, talking to someone. And he was scared. She's pushing too far, he said. This wasn't the plan. I didn't sign up for this level of risk. If she tries to disappear again, I'm not going with her. The voice that responded was distorted, digitally warped. Mail, maybe not. Then end it, or we will. The file cut off. My stomach dropped. There were more people involved. More than Cassidy had told Jonah. More than Jonah was willing to deal with. This wasn't about love or revenge anymore. It was about leverage, money, identity, power. Cassidy wasn't just cheating. She was playing a long con that reached beyond anything I'd ever seen. And now it was unraveling because someone in her network had changed the rules. Someone who wasn't playing anymore. The email came again the next morning. Same anonymous sender. No message. No subject. Just coordinates and a time. I stared at it for almost 10 minutes before I even moved. My mind ran through every logical scenario, and none of them were good. Either it was a trap, or worse, the next chapter or whatever Cassidy had dragged me into. But I couldn't ignore it. Not after what I'd heard. By the time I got to the location, a desolate parking lot behind a shuttered strip mall, it was nearly empty except for a dull gray SUV parked at the far end. Tinted windows. Engine off. The kind of vehicle you forget after seeing it. As I pulled up, the passenger side door opened, and a man stepped out slowly. No introduction. No handshake. He looked more like a finance executive than someone you'd expect in this kind of setup. Tailored coat. Clean-shaven. Eyes that didn't blink enough. You Everett? He asked, like he already knew the answer. I nodded. You sent the recordings? He didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a phone. He tapped a video, handed it to me, and what I saw made my skin crawl. It was Cassidy, in a hotel conference room, standing beside a man I didn't recognize, speaking confidently in front of a small group of well-dressed individuals. On a whiteboard behind her, in bold marker, Asset Isolation Strategies. She was giving a presentation, selling the method, The psychology, the timing. The key, she said on the video, is making them believe they were complicit. That way, even if they get suspicious, they're too ashamed to speak out. Especially men like Everett, conflict avoidant, financially conservative, emotionally dependent. Perfect scaffolding. The man took the phone back before I could finish. You were a training case, he said. I felt the world tilt. She used me for what? Practice. Not practice. Proof of concept. Your marriage was the model for a larger system. She's not just stealing identities. She's selling the process. I felt sick. Who are you? We monitor operations like hers. Our goal isn't to shut them down. It's to direct them. People like Cassidy are useful when kept under control. That's when I understood. They weren't trying to stop her. They wanted her on a leash. She's gone too far, he added, like it was an afterthought. She's improvising, breaking structure. That's dangerous for us. And for you. For me, I laughed bitterly. You think I still matter to her? She already drained everything she could. He stepped closer. That's exactly why you matter. You're the one thread she didn't cut cleanly. And now you're dangling. He handed me a small black case. And here is everything you need to erase yourself from her system. Bank credentials, identity reclaims, location history files. Use it, or don't. But if you don't, we walk away. And if she implodes, you're the first casualty. I stood there, frozen, while he got back in the car and drove off. No warning. No signature. Just the thrum of tires fading down the highway. Back home, I opened the case. Inside were 5 documents, a prepaid phone, and a USB drive. The USB had only one file on it. A screen recording of a private chat thread between Cassidy and Jonah. The name of the folder? The exit plan. And in the last message, time-stamped 2 nights ago, the night I confronted her, Jonah wrote. Everett was supposed to be gone by now. What's the delay? Cassidy replied. He's unraveling. That's what we wanted. But now I think I want him to see it all. Let it burn. Let it burn. She wasn't done with me. She wanted me awake for the collapse. I paced the living room for hours, replaying everything. My hands hovered over the prepaid phone. I thought about calling Madeline, about turning the files over to the police. But that man's warning echoed louder than anything else. If she implodes, you're the first casualty. This wasn't justice anymore. It was survival, and I was running out of time. That night, as I was shutting down my laptop, a final email came in. No sender, no body, just 3 words in the subject line. She's watching you. I didn't sleep the night that final email came in. She's watching you. I left every light in the house on, checked the locks, shut down every device. But as dawn crept in through the blinds, something inside me shifted. Fear had ruled me for months. Shame had drowned me. But now I felt something I hadn't in ages. Clarity. I stood in the kitchen, the same kitchen where they once planned my collapse. And I poured myself a cup of coffee in the mug she'd left behind. Her favorite one, the one that said good vibes only. A cruel joke now. I sat down at the table and pulled out the black case the stranger had given me. I opened every file, one by one. Bank accounts, digital access logs, messages she thought I'd never see. The full paper trail of her scheme, mapped from day one. I backed up everything, uploaded it to 3 encrypted locations, made hard copies, and then I wrote a letter, short, polite, unshakable. Cassidy, you lost me the moment you thought I was too broken to notice. I noticed everything. Good luck explaining the rest. Then I got in my car, drove 3 hours to an out-of-state branch of my old credit union, and reopened a frozen account she didn't know still existed. I moved every last usable dollar there, closed everything else, called the IRS, sent them the files anonymously. Then I did something that surprised even me. I booked a flight, not to run, to begin. Cassidy had taken so much, but she hadn't taken me, not the real me, the one that had been buried under years of gaslighting, second-guessing, and walking on eggshells. The day I left, I didn't tell her. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I left my wedding ring on the table, slipped the apartment keys under the mat, and walked out the front door with just a duffel bag and my backup laptop. No drama. No final confrontación. That would have been her script, and I was done playing her roles. I flew to Portland, got an Airbnb, Started fresh. A week later, I began writing again. Really writing, not just scribbled thoughts in the margins of my misery. Short stories, essays, a memoir I never planned to publish. Until an email arrived from a small digital magazine. They'd read one of my stories online, wanted to feature it. The editor said it had real pain, but honest strength. I smiled. 3 months later, I got another message, this one from a woman who read the piece and said she related to every word. Her name was Claire. She was a librarian, divorced, thought she'd never laugh again after what her ex put her through. We exchanged letters, then calls, then coffee. The world didn't spin back to perfect, but I didn't want perfect anymore. I wanted real, and I finally had it. As for Cassidy, the last I heard, she was under investigation. Madeline emailed once, said the authorities were quietly tracking several accounts linked to Cassidy's former aliases. But I didn't follow up. I didn't need to know the ending of her story anymore, because I'd started my own. And this time, I didn't need anyone's permission to be the hero of it.